I think it's reset the agenda. Just the announcement of these policies have caused Keir Starmer to start putting out social media posts that sound almost Trumpian in their content. So essentially, Farage has dragged all of the other parties further to the right. And we now see from polling that immigration is now the single biggest issue. It was cost of living for a long time. Now that's been overtaken by immigration. The public aren't buying any of the nonsense any longer. And I think Farage has a winning plan here.
Hello and welcome to Newspeak. I'm Peter Whittle, and I'm joined, as usual, pleased to say, by Rafe Heydel-Mankoo, Senior Fellow and Moral Historian, Amy Gallagher of Stand Up to Work, and Dr. Philip Kiszely, Senior Fellow and National Organiser, with quite a few things going on with locals.
There's a huge amount going on with locals at the moment, Peter. Most of all, and most importantly, there is a conference in Manchester on the 27th. Tickets are available now. If you go onto our website, you can just click onto the locals page and you'll be able to get tickets for that. As I say, it's on the 27th of September, and we've got a sterling set of speakers here. We've got, you'll be there speaking, won't you? Mm-hmm. Nick Buckley, Charlie Downs, Naraya Khan, Raja Mia, and Gawain Towler. Those are just some of the speakers we'll have there. So I'm very excited about that. I think it's going to be a great day in Manchester. Also, locals are going to be in London on the 13th for the Tommy Robinson's Unite the Kingdom march demonstration, and we'll be there under a banner, a locals banner there. So we'll be meeting. I'll share more information about this nearer the time, but we'll be meeting around about Waterloo Station. I think it starts from, doesn't it? So locals will be there. We'll be out. We'll be loud and proud. We'll be under our own banner, and we'll be marching for the kingdom.
And basically, we've had some dates going up, haven't we? Under here as we're talking. What about the conference? Just go back to that. Is there a theme?
Yes, there is. So this is, it's called 1066 to 2066 with a question mark, England with a question mark. And really, it's a country on the brink. I think that's the theme. And what's happening, what's going to happen, how we got into this mess, how are we going to get out of this mess, what will the future look like, what kind of future do we have? So all of those things. It's going to be slightly themed around northern issues. We've got Raja Mia, as I say, and we've got Nick Buckley and one or two other speakers there. So I think it's going to be very exciting. It's just about now. It's about what's happening. It's about all of these things, you know?
Well, look, talking of what's happening now, actually, there's interesting stuff. We've covered this a lot before, but events have rather overtaken us on other areas. But the BBC's been up to its old casting tricks again, hasn't it?
Yes, they call it colourblind casting, don't they? But in fact, it is racist casting, because it's not colourblind at all. It's precisely the opposite of colourblind casting. So this is their big Sunday night historical drama, and it's called King and Conqueror, and it's about 1066. It's about, King Harold, William the Conqueror, and all that kind of great period, that initial period in modern English history. And it's a drama, but it's a kind of historical drama, and it takes huge liberties with the truth and with history and with the past. And in a way, that's fine, because all historical dramas do. This is for television, so that the medium dictates that there needs to be conflict, there needs to be action, there needs to be lines of action, all of those things. There needs to be resolution, and they need to be in particular places. So we call this the classical narrative paradigm, and everybody who makes shows and series about history kind of tends to move things around. That's one thing. That's serving the medium, okay? It's completely another thing to take historical figures and change their ethnicity. So that's kind of taking a modern ideological agenda, actually, that people really do not like, this idea of identity politics imposing itself on our history and changing our history, and having that lead and using our history to somehow illustrate an ideology, illustrate a way of seeing things. It's almost kind of taking what happened 1,000 years ago and saying, well, actually, we're going to use this to push forward this multicultural agenda, to actually pretend that the people who were there were actually black. And of course, nobody was. That's just absolute nonsense.
But what I don't quite get about this particular approach, are they prominent figures, by the way?
No, I don't necessarily think they are, but in a way that doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter, no.
Because what they're doing is they say, look, this is colourblind casting. We're just using any kind of people here, and if you object to this, you're racist. Now, of course, that is absolutely not true, as we know. If you were to take a black historical figure and make him into a conservative white man, all hell would break loose.
Yes.
So this is just serving an ideological agenda. All of this stuff serves an ideological agenda. And sorry, just to make the point, you simply can't get away from it, okay?
Oh, no.
It's British film, it's British television, it's the national theatre, it's regional theatre, it's all of those things. You simply cannot lose it.
Yeah. I think the thing is, the point I was about to make, I don't know whether you see, it seems to me that the ideology that you refer to is confused in the sense that isn't the ideology to talk about the endless and ongoing oppression of black people? But the point of so many of these shows is by putting black people in positions they couldn't possibly have been in.
Yeah.
Aren't people going to turn around and say, well, they were there. What are you complaining about? You were an aristocrat in 18th century England. And
they're rewriting
rulers and
history
shakers of the
and they're
empire.
rewriting, taking racism out of the equation. It's very confused because critical race theory and anti-racism says that race is all important and you can't not see colour. But then the kind of colourblind or colour casting approach is that you shouldn't notice. So are we supposed to notice or not? Is it important or not? And that's the contradiction. And as Philip says, it only ever goes one way. I mean, if you depicted African history or Barack Obama or Nelson Mandela as a white person, all hell would break loose. So they're not colourblind. They are just trying to rewrite history in that sense. And I would have been, 15, 20 years ago, I would have said, well, what does it matter? If he's a good actor, give him the part. But because it's so often, you see it all the time now, and it feels so strongly that there is an agenda. I mean, there's a play on in London about Shakespeare and Christopher Marlowe, and one of them is black, and you think, obviously they were both white. And again, as I said, 10 or 15 years ago, I would have said, well, maybe he's the best actor for the job. I know that Christopher Marlowe or Shakespeare were both white, but I can, I can put up with the lie because maybe he was great. But now I see it, I just think, oh my God, it's just more agenda, more ideology, and we're having this stuff rammed on us all the time. If it's advertisement, there's always mixed race couples all the time. I went to the cinema recently, all the adverts had mixed race couples or black people. It was almost more black people than white people in the advertisements. So I think everybody just feel it's such a turn off. I almost wouldn't go and see something now if it was pushing this. But it's just it's so demoralising.
Yeah.
And I think that's what it is. It's very hard not to be demoralised by it.
Also very, very hard to criticise without sounding exactly the way they want it to sound.
It's a trap.
But it's also very distracting. I mean, one of the things when you watch a historical period piece is you want to lose yourself in the drama, in the story, in the narrative. So when we saw The Crown on Netflix, they went to great lengths to cast women who looked like the Queen at various stages of her life. We all adored Gary Oldman's performance of Churchill because he literally metamorphosized into the embodiment of Churchill. And so when you go to all that effort to get historical accuracy, to get the clothing right, to get people that look, suddenly you go and you've got a black Anne Boleyn, you've got an Asian Isaac Newton on Doctor Who. In this show we're talking about, they've got King William's wife is half Sri Lankan, and you have a Thane, which is like a sort of an ancient baron or earl, is a sub-Saharan African. I mean, you spend more time getting distracted by that, and it pulls you out of the show. You can't get lost in it.
But in a way, that's what they want it to do. There's a word for it. It's the Brechtian alienation effect, actually. So it jars you. So there's verisimilitude. Everything kind of looks the same, and then you have this. You cannot help but be jarred from it, and that's what they want you to do. They want you to stop and think. They want you to say, oh, well, there's a person of colour here doing all of this kind of thing. They say they don't, but that's precisely what they do want.
And of course, this rewriting of history is all about building up these new foundational myths of British society. The new foundational myths are that Britain has always been a multicultural country, even though, of course, we know that completely nonsense. That's why you have BBC history books coming out now saying that sub-Saharan Africans built Stonehenge, and this is all part and parcel of that. But you're quite right. I read an article by a black actor, an activist in Canada, who was saying, what was the point of the civil rights movement if everything you're suggesting is that the world was always hunky-dory? But it's also part of this, complete collapse in proper history. So this show on King and Conqueror is completely factually wrong as well. I mean, they've got Edward the Confessor murdering his mother when he never killed her. It just exiled her. He's also a saint. Not many saints go around murdering people. He's got William and Harold being friends before they became kings. They met once, perhaps, And so when you watch something like this, you're expecting at least to have some historical narrative, but by every measure, it's a complete failure.
Do you feel as strongly about this if it is a portrayal of factual things, or do you think that people doing fiction can get away with things a bit more on this kind of casting front? I mean, the difference between, for example, Great Expectations and this history, is there a difference?
For me, there's not. So Bridgerton is a classic example. People say Bridgerton is supposed to be a fantasy where all the duchesses and dukes are black and so forth. But I'm sorry, that's not how most people take it. It just feeds into this narrative, and it's almost as if we're being goaded all the time. This is this is British history, this is European history, this is our world, and you are now interfering with the past in such a way that young people growing up get a completely distorted view because they don't. It's the same thing with the Crown. So much of the Crown was fictional. But Americans, Canadians, Australians that I know thought everything that happened in there was absolutely factually accurate. Whereas if you watch something on Jeffrey Dahmer they said some of these scenes are fictionally based. He didn't get that in The Crown. I don't think a lot of audiences around the world watching this content understand the difference between fictionalized and historic literature.
And it's just really badly done as well. So some of it's quite anachronistic. So they use modern language in an old setting, and it really jars. And what they say is, well, that's making history much more accessible to people because these people are speaking it in the way that we would speak. It doesn't. It absolutely alienates. It pushes history a million miles away when you've got these people speaking in kind of a modern London style. And it's actually quite funny as well. It sounds ludicrous, and all of the notices for this have said it's just laughable. It's more like it's more like a Monty Python than a serious drama.
Well, it's patronising too, isn't it?
It's patronising, yeah. It's almost like I know. Let's do street dance for Shakespeare.
Yes. Well, they're doing that at the National Theatre. They're doing a version of Hamlet with some black chap playing Hamlet, and the trailer, the clip for it, is Hamlet sitting in a throne sort of a thing, about to do the to be or not to be, but he's speaking in sort of East London multi-culti gang speak, and it ends up with something like to be or not to be in it. It's in it at the end of it. So I wrote a comment on I said something's rotten in the National Theatre. Having seen that, because it is, but you're interfering with the great works of literature.
Also, there's another point about this that really irritates me. People are obsessed with colonisation. To me, these aspects of our culture are being colonised. Why don't you go and write your own Bond? Why don't you go and write different stories? Why constantly try to be a parasite on existing stories?
Yeah, that's what it feels like very much, that it's rewriting history but trying to take over. It's like trying to assert their own narrative, their own view, and it is a kind of a colonisation. If this was done to any other race or any other nationality, as I said, if it was done to black people's history, there would be absolute uproar, trying to rewrite black history or show a black person in history as a white person, but with our history, it doesn't matter. And I think, Harrison made this point on the podcast a while back, but I think it's driven by kind of envy, actually, of our history, because our history is so wonderful that they feel that they have to take it over or destroy it. That's what it feels like to me.
Yes, I'm inclined to agree with that. There is a cultural envy.
Yeah.
Because otherwise you wouldn't see online, on Twitter, some of these like crazy people talking about how everything came from Africa. Every scientific invention came from Africa.
It comes from insecurity, doesn't it?
Which is why, of course, Africa is the great gleaming city on the hilltop, isn't it?
Yes, yes.
It's all about
Winds sailing close to here.
it's all about deconstructing, isn't it? It's kind of negative, really. It isn't a celebration of a culture because there isn't a history and there isn't a heritage there. It's about deconstructing, nibbling away, attacking our culture constantly. It's almost like a Chinese water torture in a way. And again, that's what it's about. You know, it is about all of those things. What they say it's about, what it purports to be, it's the opposite.
Problem is that the people in charge of that culture, the gatekeepers or whatever, they don't actually. They're up for all of this. In fact, they are the ones doing it, and be horrified if you suggested otherwise. That's the problem we've got, I think.
Well, I mean, again, it's always the white person or whiteness or the white man in particular that must be the villain or must be doing something wrong, even when we know patently that is not the case. And there's an example at the moment, isn't there, on the tube, an advert on the tube about noise pollution, and it's got this middle-aged man with a white older than me, a white middle-aged man with earphones, but he's the one who's the noise polluter. And clearly that is not the case. White middle-aged men aren't storming up and down tubes with their
listening to Vaughan Williams on.
Yeah, Gone Horse Question Time. Listening to Vaughan Williams, Elgar. It's terrible down there, taking their trousers off, God knows what.
Actually, there are three, they're not three ads, and they're all white.
Oh, the three?
Yeah. And it's almost always, but from my own personal experience, it's almost always people speaking another language when it's really loud and they're on the phone. And that's what's so, what kind of adds to it, because if you're shouting down the phone and you can't understand the other person's language, you don't know what they're saying. So it's a kind of a bit, you feel a bit nervous because you can't kind of properly assess the risk. You're like, what is this? What's going on? And I think it is because there's so many different cultures now in London, so many different languages spoken, that the social fabric has just broken down, and there's no consideration of the other person because everybody's in their own culture, their own language.
Well, it is actually a self-inflicted Babel.
It's a Babel.
Yes, literally, yeah.
It's culture clash for the speakerphones, but it's also bad manners for the young hoodlums and gangs who play there. Like in the 1980s, people had boom boxes. We've got back to that stage now where they can just play the things full blast, and now that we have headphones, there's no excuse for it. Remarkably, there were two articles, one in the columns in the Independent and in the Spectator, of all places, where people said this was a bad idea to ban noise on the tube because it prevents us from having spontaneous conversations with each other. If we've all got earphones in, I thought, have you taken a train in Croydon or something? The last thing you want to do is
spontaneous conversation on the tube. That's the last thing you want.
This doesn't happen. Anyway, far that under grumpy, but nevertheless true. Sort of going back a little bit more seriously, actually now, big announcement from Reform this week, done in Oxford, done in a hangar, aircraft hangar, I thought very impressively done, annoyed all the right people. This was actually, was it not, Rafe, about how Reform would indeed expel or not, as it may be, illegal migrants.
I think one of the most important speeches Farage has delivered completely ratcheted the argument onto the right firmly, saying things that we've been calling for. In fact, you couldn't help but wonder whether they've been listening to the New Culture Forum, because two of the proposals only we have been talking about for the last 5 years. One, of course, consistently talking about camps, and the other one consistently calling for an end to the 1951 UN Convention. I don't believe anybody else was talking about this apart from us, so it's curious that those are two also in here. But yes, I think an extremely good series of proposals here. 600,000 deportations over the next 5 years. Arresting, detaining and deporting people as soon as they arrive. So essentially having a new law come in that says if you arrive by boat, you will not be allowed to stay. You will be deported and you will be denied re-entry at any point in the future. Obviously, this is going to cause ire from people on the left, which means that you must know that it's sounding right. But fascinatingly, we even now have people like former Labour ministers like Jack Straw and David Blunkett coming out in support of some of these proposals, most markedly leaving the European Convention on Human Rights and the 1951 Convention, or at least disallowing those elements that have become such a problem, reversing the Human Rights Act, and also creating, of course, using old RAF bases to house people now in the future going forward who are coming over here. I think it's reset the agenda. Just the announcement of these policies have caused Keir Starmer to start putting out social media posts that sound almost Trumpian in their content. So essentially, Farage has dragged all of the other parties further to the right. And we now see from polling that immigration is now the single biggest issue. It was cost of living for a long time. Now that's been overtaken by immigration. The public aren't buying any of the nonsense any longer. And I think Farage has a winning plan here.
I think, yes. Also, I think the most recent poll today has them hugely in front reform.
Yeah.
I think it's something like 30-something as against 20 and 18.
Yeah. Yes, I mean, everyone on the left, Anna Soubry and others have been saying, oh, the media is giving far too much attention to reform. Why are they boosting reform? They've only got 4 seats in Parliament compared to the SNP and the Lib Dems. So have you seen the polls? I mean, I know everyone together, they're basically still behind reform.
Yes.
I exaggerate, but that's the...
Yes, so basically we just take from that, actually, then, Rafe, that you are pretty foursquare behind them.
Well, what can I say? We've been arguing for these policies. These are exactly the policies that I've been arguing for. Incentivized remigration as well. They're supporting all of that. So I can't say if any party puts forward proposals that I support, I have to say it's a great idea. This includes sending people back to places like Afghanistan and Eritrea. And what's been remarkable is the pearl clutching and the hand-wringing from Newsnight and from the mainstream media, from liberal politicians. How could you possibly send people back to Afghanistan and deal with the Taliban as if that's an unconscionable idea? Hello, the European Union have signed just that same deal with Afghanistan. For some reason, I don't know why Reform dropped the ball on this. They didn't mention this. No. The EU have actually considered this, have signed a deal with Afghanistan. Keir Starmer is actually considering it too, and yet you don't hear that in the media. It all sounds as if, reform is beyond the pale by even considering this.
Well, speaking of the media, speaking of the media, did you not notice when they had that press conference with Nigel Farage up there, all the questions, bar one, were about what's going to happen to these poor people when they're sent back.
Absolutely.
It was no one mentioned a victim, a rape victim. No one mentioned any of this. It was all about that.
No, the mainstream media is your enemy. Okay, and you were talking about polls and stats before. Now, it's now 8 out of 10 people are extremely unhappy with this country and the government and the way things are going. I agree with everything Rafe said, and I think Farage has backed up a little bit over the last 24 hours on this, and I think he said, "Well, we're not talking about women and children." I don't mind really that kind of equivocation because I think he's just playing the game, and this is a long haul. He's talking about when they get in power, and you have to do these things incrementally, and sometimes you do have to change things incrementally, and sometimes you have to give way. That's the nature of politics. And he was saying, well, we're not even really talking about women and children. What we're really concerned with at the moment, which are the key words, are the thousands and thousands of fighting age sexually active males. So I think he's right to do that. And I also think it wrong foots them a little bit because, as you said, the key thing with the media and the key thing with the conference was, this is terrible, you're wicked. What about these poor people? What about these migrants? Oh my God. So he's just wrong-footing them there and saying, well, we're talking about men. That's it. And let's not consider women and children yet. Yes, it is equivocation. Yes, it is pushing back. But I think it's actually quite savvy, and I don't mind it.
Do you think, what did you make, Amy, of the reaction from what would you call the right flank? I mean, Rupert, Lowe, Ben, people like that.
Yeah, people wanting
the
to...
online right. Aren't they actually claiming a certain amount of victory here?
Oh, because they've pushed him.
Yes.
I think it's because he used the term, did he not, mass deportations, and that was a kind of term that originated online, I think, on Twitter. I mean, it's difficult to know where it totally originated, but he was, the fallout with Rupert Lowe was about that, or it was partly about that Rupert Lowe was going too far in some of his assertions, and now it seems as though Nigel's more open to adopting some of that rhetoric and some of those ideas, so they're saying that he's moved that way. I would say I just think that Nigel Farage is. I think a lot of people on the on so-called online right underestimate him. I think people have said this before, but he has a knack for understanding timing politically. And we've had all of these protests and the flags and the migrant hotels, and now he's realised he can get away with being a bit tougher. I think he is playing that game, that he's working out what can he say that people will be harder for people to challenge him and call him a racist. I mean, this speech, I thought he spoke, it felt to me more serious. It had more weight behind it.
He's wearing a blue suit. It's sort of always serious when he wears a blue suit.
It felt like it to me, a man who's realised he could be the next Prime Minister. That's how it felt to me. And he framed it as very interesting. He framed this as, about human rights laws, about how we need to get rid of the Human Rights Act and replace it with, I think he called it a British Rights Act or something like that.
Bill of Rights.
A British Bill of Rights. And it's very clever because it's very high. His opposition is obviously the Labour Party. Well, the Prime Minister of the Labour Party is a human rights lawyer. There's absolutely no way that they can, agree with it. There's a very clear dividing line in terms of, are you on the side of these human rights laws or not? And there's no way that the Labour Party can defend it because they're totally in opposition to him on that. So even though Keir Starmer is on Twitter saying things that are sort of like what Nigel Farage would say, he's never going to come out and say, yes, let's leave the ECHR. Yes, there is a problem with these human rights laws. How can he? Because he's a human rights lawyer. So I think Nigel Farage is very clever in this respect, and that's why I've always been I've been hesitant to sort of criticise him. Because
yes, but you've been very consistent on that fact, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, it's interesting, when you talk about the human rights aspect of it, you can see what Labour are already doing, and I can see that it's absolutely what they would do, is saying they want to take away your rights. And that's based on the fact that people now are terribly ignorant of our own traditions of rights.
Well,
and the Magna Carta. They really do think.
Or it's almost as though they've never heard of the common law, for God's sake.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? As though we didn't have all of these protections beforehand, And it really is stark, isn't it? It's either British, English common law versus this globalist kind of thing that is just clamped on us and shuts us down and gives everybody else rights apart from us. And I think I agree with Amy. I think he's incredibly clever in the way he's framed this, and I think he's done it just at the right time.
And I do
stepping
think
back a
just
bit.
to say, I do think it is getting through to some people this, because it's very hard to be in opposition to human rights. You sound like you're evil or something. But I do think, David Stark has been talking about this for a long time. I do think it is getting through to people. There was a moment on mainstream programme this morning with this presenter Ryden Clark, who's he was on X Factor. He's very
Guy with the
very mainstream with the teeth. Very mainstream, and he understood this issue completely, and he was very confident in expressing there is a problem here. These people have rights and access to certain things that our own people don't have. So I think criticising human rights now is becoming people are more able to do it because they're seeing that it means that migrants have more rights than us.
Well, importantly, what's happening in the new Bill of Rights that Farage wants to bring forward is that there will be rights which are restricted to citizens only. So if you're not a citizen, or if you don't have the right to live here, so not just citizens, but people who are living here who aren't citizens, you have certain rights. But it has been quite hysterical to see people like Stella Creasy and others on social media saying we're going to be losing our rights if we lose all this. The 2010 Human Rights Act enshrines the right to marry. It's like, we were able to marry before 2010. And my memory's a bit hazy, but I'm pretty sure. And also with the ECHR, people say, Britain was a founding member of the ECHR and we don't want to lose any of those rights. The whole point of the ECHR was to give to Europe the rights that we enjoyed in Britain. England is the home of liberty. English liberty is very different to sort of Greek and Roman liberty. These ideas of personal freedom and so forth, those were Anglosphere freedoms. After the Second World War, we wanted to ensure that Europeans benefited from what we enjoy. So getting rid of the ECHR won't affect us in any way whatsoever.
Yes. If all those proposals go into a manifesto, as you say, very coherent, and very sort of nut and bolt, I thought, actually, in a way they didn't even need to be at this particular time. It was very, very good. I thought it was very, very good. What did you make, just to go back on this thing about the right criticism from the right, about Elon Musk? What did you make of Elon Musk's criticism? it seems to have been from watching the speech, I don't know. He started off by saying, "Go, Nigel, go," or something. And he ended by saying he's, wheat juice or something?
Weak sauce.
Weak sauce. He will not protect the British. Do you think my perception is what he says carries less and less weight?
Yeah, well, he's had a sort of falling out with Donald Trump anyway, hasn't he? He doesn't seem to have as much political power as he did at one stage. But he and also on Twitter, he's coming out with all sorts of things that are a bit, that make you question his, judgment. So, I mean, he's, I think it carries weight on Twitter, but I don't think outside of that, I don't think it does. And polls show that he's actually not well liked in the UK. I mean, I like him. I think he's done brilliant things, but he's not well liked. And I think maybe it's a cultural issue. Maybe, he doesn't realise quite how mild-mannered we are, and that Nigel is keeping that in mind when he says certain things in a certain way. But yeah, I don't think it will have that much of an impact.
But I think he wants to fund Ben Habib in the advanced UK, and I think more power to him if he wants to do that. The more people we have on side fighting the fight, and the better armed and equipped they are to fight those campaigns, and if necessary to keep reform's feet to the fire, also very important. And you need funding to do that sort of a thing. So no, I'm fully in support. And look, we owe Elon Musk great debt of gratitude. He's very interested in Britain, which he sees as the mother country. Remember, if it wasn't for him, we wouldn't have had the progress on the rape gang. Well, let's see where we end up with that, but at least brought it onto the agenda. Also, he's been, flying the English flag on his account, fully behind the English flag protest movement. So let him get behind Ben. More power to both of them, and let's hope that some good things come out of that.
Is it Ben or Rupert? It's Ben, isn't he?
It was Ben, yeah. Right, yeah. And he's also retweeted Rupert's those Restore Britain charts on ethnicity and sexual assault and so forth.
And it is important to just pause and think and just consider the things we're talking about at the moment, how things have changed, how the focus of the debate has changed. I don't want to talk about the Overton window, but you know what I mean, how the focus of the debate has shifted, how the dynamism now is on the right, and there are so many, maybe they're competing a little bit, but I don't think it's necessarily such a bad thing. There are so many key players on the right now. All the ideas are coming from the right. All the energy is coming from the right. I think in lots of ways it's a very exciting time. It's a very scary time. I almost dread looking at my phone in the morning because of all of the crazy things that happen. But it feels as though, with reform, it's up and down and up and down. I'm impressed with them one week and I'm disappointed with them the next. But it is still very early days. The general election, if we get that far, is still a long way away. But the energy has changed. The energy is with the right, and I think that's the most important thing.
That's the most telling thing, is how moribund and defeated the left are. I mean, all you've got there are fruit and nuts, Sultana and Corbyn. The only people possibly coming up with a new party, but even there don't seem to be any realistic ideas.
Just below.
I tell you, you wait. That, if it really comes to it with the immigration issue, and supposing that, for example, reform, and I really think this could happen, actually gets more radical as time goes on.
I think they will.
So I don't think this is the end. No. They might get more radical.
I think it's incremental.
Yeah. But the fight that these people, our enemies, are going to put up will make Brexit look like just a picnic. Everything about what they believe is wrapped up in that, particularly in diversity, because Brexit was just an offshoot of diversity and immigration, actually, for them.
But just a year ago, mass deportations was a toxic term. A year ago, talking about camps for refugees, talking about leaving the UN Convention. We're only a few months on from when that was verboten, and now that's become mainstream. And you're quite right, it's going to go a lot further. I guarantee you, in the next year or two, voluntary remigration will be something which will become common parlance in this country. By the time we get to the next election, people are going to be much more hardline on all of these sorts of things. But none of it's going to work unless reform comes out with proposals to fundamentally reform the civil service. We need to see a reform bill changing the Home Office, which is a fifth column at the heart of this nation, getting rid of the Supreme Court. Because it's one thing to have all these proposals, but we've seen how difficult it was for the Tories to get anything on with Rwanda and so forth. There'll be so many obstacles by the blob You need to tackle the blob at the same time if you're going to have any hope of any of this coming to fruition.
Which means they've got to reform, have got to get a landslide or a very healthy, like they've got to get a Thatcher majority. She had 44, I believe, in 79, and that was enough. It was solid enough, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, they've got to get more MPs, haven't they? I mean, they've got to get more people. At the moment, it's like a band of 4, but they're going to have more people stepping up, and it can't just all be just, previous Tories. It's got to be lots of new, fresh faces coming through, and you've got to really feel like they've got to get it together.
Well, they are vetting a lot of people, and they're vetting people from a broad breadth of background as well, so that's rather encouraging to feel.
But also it's governance as well, isn't it? Is how they handle themselves, how they communicate, how they sort out their troubles within the party, and that could be the huge stumbling block with reform, as it was with UKIP.
Amy, what has Nigel Farage said about the raising the colours movement? Has he said much? Do you know? He
said that reform would make sure that councils don't take down the flags, I think. He said that would be his policy. That some of the councils were going out and taking down these flags, and he was saying that nobody should take them down. People should fly their flags proudly, and they shouldn't be taken down. I don't know if he said anything more than that. But yeah, generally, I mean, people are still putting up these flags. It's still going on. The
energy is still there.
The energy is still there. I mean, you're seeing pictures of people painting the flags on roundabouts and zebra crossings. It's funny because, obviously I wouldn't encourage, criminal damage or vandalism, but we have been seeing...
in a very coy way.
Well, we have had, I should say, the state did impose the transgender flag on zebra crossings. So actually, it's a bit hypocritical to say one's right and one's the other right.
Yes,
so
of course.
One has state backing, the other one doesn't. So, I'm not really going to put up much of a fuss, actually, about people painting the flag.
Horses can get across it, can't they?
Yeah, exactly.
They have no problem with it, whereas they have massive problem with the flag, don't they? Yeah. Where is this going to all end up, do you think?
I don't know. I think it's been a very positive movement. I don't know where it's going, but I think on the right, we've often spoke about how we're not very good at doing movements. Like with the left, they have Black Lives Matter and anti-racism, and they use language in a way that makes it very difficult to disagree with it, and we're not good at doing that. But I think this movement's been very, very clever in that it means that if you're seen taking down the flag, you're against the nation. And obviously if you take it down, people could just put it up anyway. So it doesn't stop people, it just emboldens them. And it is kind of separating people into, are we allowed to be a nation and be proud of our nation or not? And if you're the person taking down the flag, are you saying that you're against the nation?
Yes.
So it is quite polarising in quite a clever way. I mean, I don't know. To me, it feels very positive in that regard, but I don't know where it's going. Obviously, as Rafe said, Elon Musk has tweeted the flag. It's got a lot of momentum online. But it does show that people are aware that there's a problem and that there needs to be some kind of fight back, and it's the start of that. And it might not be flags in the future. It might be something else.
Yeah, I think it's quite good as performative activism. I think performative activism, if it's going to be really successful, actually needs to be really simple, because it has to polarise. You're either for it or against it. And if you're seen to be against it, then you need to be a villain of the piece in some way, shape or form. And I think he's done that really well. And we've all been talking about this all over the media for the last week, haven't we? And for me, it's about us collectively putting our collective foot down and saying enough is enough with the trans flag, with the rainbow flag, with the Palestinian flag, and all of these things that they represent, which is essentially a balkanization of Britain, a segregation. And this brings things together. It comes out of love as well. It's fundamentally it's love of country, and it's wanting to conserve something. It's that Burkean thing, isn't it? So I think it's just a fantastic. Movement. And I was just walking, having a walk in the slightly rural area just around where I live, and they were all there, all around the houses. It was just fantastic to see.
And the speed with which some councils have been trying to get rid of the St George's Cross has led to some amusing images of people in Birmingham putting this cross of St George on their uncollected bin bags, or seeing potholes in the street, putting an English flag there, saying maybe you'll fill it up now finally. So at least there's some English humour there as well.
Yeah.
Yes, it's interesting actually you say that about people having had enough, because last week's monologue I did, which is the biggest ever had, it was palpable, this feeling of people, palpable. Yeah. that's it, we've had it, we've had enough, quite understandable with this too. We're going to carry on for our members, exclusive content actually for members is what I should say. Philip, thank you very, very much. Amy, Rafe, thank you very, very much. We shall see you all next week. Take care. Bye. Our mission at the New Culture Forum is and always has been to defend and celebrate Britain's history, culture and its people, and indeed Western civilization, at a time when both are under sustained attack. We have grown from small beginnings to become the country's most influential right-leaning cultural think tank. Our content is watched and read by some of Britain's most influential political figures. But now, we need your help. If you believe in what we do, then please do become a member. For as little as £4 a month, you can make a vital contribution to what we do. As a member of the NCF family, you will help ensure that we can continue to produce quality content online, such as our 3 weekly programs, Whittle, which is our flagship interview show, Newspeak, our panel discussion show, and Deprogrammed, which is targeted at Britain's youth. As you probably know, in addition, we produce important documentaries, such as our critically acclaimed 6-part series, The West, a stunning celebration of the history and genius of Western civilization, and our ongoing documentary series, Heresies, with hard-hitting episodes tackling subjects such as immigration, gender ideology, and BBC bias. But the New Culture Forum is much more than a YouTube channel. We don't just complain about Britain as it is, we provide real solutions and clear policies on how we can push back against the madness and restore sanity to this nation. Our presenters are now highly sought after and have become familiar faces across the media. Our prestigious annual Smith Lecture and our regional and indeed national conferences have attracted world-class speakers. Perhaps most importantly, we are the only organisation on the right of politics that has launched a national movement without actually being a political party. And uniquely, through our NCF Locals programme, we've established some 30 active branches in towns and cities right across the nation, from Edinburgh to Exeter, and with many more on the way. We're very proud of what we've achieved, and our members have made it possible. In return, our members receive access to exclusive content, invitations to private events, free or discounted tickets to our conferences and lectures, free copies of our books, and much more. I very much hope that you'll join us too by clicking the link in the description or going to our website, newcultureforum.org.uk. Now is the time that we need your help. Thank you.